Many people's parents seem to think that these days the universities don't teach us anything useful. Back in the 1st century CE, the Roman courtier Petronius seemed to think much the same. He complained that in those days students learned nothing but melitos verborum globulos et omnia dicta factaque quasi papavere et sesamo sparsa. So now, just as in Petronius's time, you're about to learn some honeyed globs. Not globs of words, but delicious fried cheese balls, rolled in honey and sprinkled with poppy and sesame seeds. Here is how to make globuli. You will need fresh cheese curd. Today I'll be showing you how to make your own, but you can also use ricotta, as Cato's De Agricultura calls for in a variation of this recipe. Flour. The recipe I used called for specifically semolina flour, but you'd also be just as fine to use regular all-purpose flour. In hindsight, I'd actually recommend it. Using semolina, the globuli turned out rather more dense than I had expected them to. Oil. The Romans would have used olive oil, so you can use that if you would like to be totus authenticus. I was actually running low on olive oil, so I just used vegetable oil. Honey, to glaze your globuli. Finally, to top your globuli, you can use poppy seeds and sesame seeds. First, I'm going to show you how to curdle your own milk in case you don't have any ricotta or other cheese curd on hand. You're going to want to use whole milk. Make sure it's not ultra-pasteurized. Regular pasteurized is okay, but this won't work if your milk is labeled as ultra-pasteurized. Just dump your whole milk into a pot, cover, and heat on high until your milk is boiling. Don't step away for too long, as the milk can easily boil over very quickly. And here I am not taking my own advice and letting the milk boil over. That's all right, just turn off the heat and add about a quarter cup of something acidic. I used lemon juice. You could just as easily use white vinegar. Stir that in and watch as your milk separates into white curds in yellowish whey. You'll want to let that mixture sit for about 10 minutes or so just to make sure you get as many curds as you can. This also serves to let the mixture cool off a bit, which is good as we're about to be handling it. After the pot has cooled off a bit, we want to strain out the curds. Line a colander with cheesecloth, or a couple layers of paper towels, set it over a large bowl, and pour out the contents of your pot. The cheesecloth will catch your curds, and the bowl will collect all that leftover whey. This recipe doesn't use the whey, but you shouldn't let it go to waste. Use it as a tangy replacement for water when baking or making soup. Now we want to squeeze all the excess liquid out of our curds, so just gather up the curds in your cheesecloth or paper towels and squeeze. If they're still a bit too hot, run them under cold water for a second. This can also help get rid of the very lemony flavor from the lemon juice if that's not your thing. After our curds have been strained and squeezed, we can go ahead and mix in the flour. Now I definitely overdid it with the amount of flour I used. You'll only want to use just enough flour that you can form your dough into balls. I added about a cup of flour to about 12 ounces of cheese curd, and my globuli turned out much denser than I expected them to. They were still good, but just keep that in mind. Then we want to set our dough in the fridge to set for an hour or two. Once that's done, we can form our globuli and fry them. I formed them into balls about an inch in diameter while my oil was heating up in a pot. Then, once my oil got to about 350 degrees Fahrenheit, I dropped in the globuli and fried them until they were golden brown, which only took about a minute or so. Once they're done frying, we'll want to remove them to a paper towel and get ready to coat them. There was definitely an easier way to do this, but I just took my fried globuli and rolled them around in a bowl of honey until they were nice and coated. You can probably just drizzle honey on top of them to your heart's content. Finally, we want our globuli to be papavere et sesamo sparsos, as Petronius says. So let's sprinkle on some poppy seeds and sesame seeds. Obviously, don't do this if you're allergic to either of those ingredients, but I think they're really great for the texture of the globuli. And now they're done. These little honeyed globs have an understated flavor by our modern standards, just tasting like pleasantly sweet bread. I'm pretty sure mine would have turned out a lot better and probably a bit cheesier if I hadn't completely overdone it on the flour. Nonetheless, these turned out pretty well. I gave my girlfriend some and she enjoyed them. She suggested they might be even better when paired with fresh fruit, so there's an idea for you. Either way, I hope you enjoyed watching this process of how to make globally, and I hope you get the chance to try these honeyed globs of cheese yourself.